Okay, this video is about January 6th, the so-called insurrection. There's some things that I agree with about it and some things that I don't. The first thing I disagree with is that it was an insurrection. These guys were not there. By the way, this is a driving glove. It's not some tactical glove. I get calluses on this hand here because I'm constantly doing this. So, but anyway, um, most of those guys that got arrested should have been released shortly after, and maybe not even arrested. Um, like the guys who were there didn't break anything, didn't do anything, steal any, take anything, or anything like that. Those guys. Um, if you broke windows, if you broke in, if you pushed Capitol Police out of the way, things like that, yeah, then you're gonna get arrested, charged. But even still, a lot of those guys have actually been in jail longer than the sentences they would have received if they'd had their day in court like they're constitutionally supposed to. Um, but I don't believe it was an insurrection, simply because there were hardly anyone there with guns. If you're going to overthrow a government, you're going to bring lots of guns and ammo. That just wasn't there. And, you know, even if they had, they're going to take over the Capitol building and then game over. The President of the United States and Congress just says, okay, well, you won. It's over. It's your country now. Come on, use some common sense, people. It's a political thing. Yeah, a lot of these guys should have been arrested and charged, as they were. Um, there's a lot of misleading stuff. Like, for example, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys being terrorists, even though this is one of the only real things that they had anything to do with destruction of property, etc. As far as I know, they haven't been going around throwing Molotovs into courthouses uh, and destroying private property like Black Lives Matter and Antifa people did. But, we don't see any of them in prison. Not that much, anyway. Or talked about as if they're terrorists, which they are. Um, a protest is one thing, but when you're throwing a Molotov into a courthouse, you've went beyond protesting. And the same thing with some of these guys that marched into the Capitol and broke windows and, I mean, as far as I know, with the Capitol, they weren't really destroying a lot of stuff. Yeah, they broke some windows and things like that, and those guys should be charged, don't get me wrong. But, some of them were going around, oh, I got Nancy Pelosi's podium. Ooh, wow. You know, there's lots of footage, if you look for it, where Capitol Police are like, hey, come on now, come on, put that down, okay? And then them complying. And there's footage of, some of them being pretty aggressive. But the Proud Boys and the Proud Boys, by the way, they talk about them being white supremacists. Look up the leader. Look at pictures of the leader of the Proud Boys. I forget his name. He's not white. Okay, he's Cuban and something else, but he's pretty much a black guy. If you seen him on the street, you'd think he was a black dude. It's kind of hard to be a white supremacist when you're not a white supremacist. But, that's misleading. Oh, and Trump leading the charge. Man, that's such bull. Come on. I watched the speech myself on TV. I wasn't there. So don't come get me. I mean, there were people that was at the demonstration, at the protest, who didn't have anything to do with the Capitol, who got arrested. But Trump said, I'll march with you. Like lots of presidents have said and done, etc. He didn't say, come on, let's go to the Capitol, we'll overthrow it, we'll seize people, and blah, blah, blah. Never said anything like that. He didn't even march with them. He went on home after, or back to the White House or whatever, after the speech. That's just a political game. And we need to really crack down on these politicians who are using stuff like that to try to squash their opponents. And that's all they're doing when it comes to Trump. They're just trying to squash him because they're afraid of him in 2024, as they should be. Because we all know 80 million votes for a guy who didn't even hardly come out of the basement. Please. You couldn't even fill a high school gymnasium. Trump still fills thousands of people. There's still even Trump trains. But, to call it an insurrection, at worst it was a riot. It was a protest gone bad. Or like CNN said, as the building behind them is burning, a mostly peaceful protest. It was a bunch of dumbasses that got out of hand doing dumbass things, and a bunch of other dumbasses that followed them into the building. Look, those guys are being prosecuted, as they should. They should get their court date. They should be fined, charged, whatever, and let's move on. It was not an insurrection, though. Nobody's going to overthrow the government by taking a Capitol building. Most of our senators and congressmen and so forth weren't even there that day. Another thing I noticed, Capitol Police really need some training. And maybe some of the Secret Service that were there too, because I've seen a lot of footage with a lot of so-called professionals with their fingers on the trigger. Like when that woman was killed, I forget her name, she was shot through a window in the door, a steel or brass door that they couldn't even get through, and the Capitol police officer on the other side had his gun pointed at people who weren't breaching yet, with his finger on the trigger of a Glock, and he was gloved. That was an accidental discharge, is what that was. That was a negligent discharge, is what that was. Of course, he can't come out and say that because they're going to sue the piss. The family is. So they made him out to be some hero, and he was fearful for his life, and bullshit. You shot a woman who wasn't even armed, dude. Through a door that they couldn't even get through. He should be charged too. He should at least be fired. And all of these guys, all these security and or Capitol Police, Secret Service, whatever they were, need to have some serious training, because I've seen some other footage of some of the Secret Service or Capitol Police guys, and these were guys that were in suits, so they might have been Secret Service, with their fingers on the trigger, pointing at people who didn't have weapons, weren't, busting in with guns in their hands. Almost nobody. There was maybe one or two dumbasses that had pistols on them, but they were holstered. They weren't out, trying to overthrow the government. You can't, as a cop of any kind, whether federally or whatever, you can't be pointing guns at people with your finger on the trigger, especially a Glock. So there was a lot of things that really need to be talked about with this so-called January 6th insurrection. What else is there? Trying to charge people with crimes who weren't even there, like the Proud Boy leader. He wasn't even there. he was inciting violence. He wasn't even there. Could he have incited it, you know, through the ranks of the Proud Boys? Possibly, but where's your proof? Prove he did first before you go, you know, putting these people in jail without trials. Like I said, some of these people have been in jail longer than the sentences they would have received if they'd already had their court date. That's insane. That's unconstitutional, and that's scary. That's putting political prisoners. That's doing what old England did. And going after some of these people, you know, 6 a.m. in the morning, old men and stuff, busting in their doors and things like that, because you think they might have had something to do with the planning of January 6th. There was no planning. This wasn't planned out. This was a protest protesting Biden's 80 million votes and that he won lawfully. I mean, 80 million, come on. Record numbers for a guy who didn't even come out of the basement hardly. This was a protest that got out of hand. And a bunch of dumbasses. And there is some rumors, I don't know. But there is some rumors that there were inside agitators getting this going. Could there have been? Wouldn't surprise me. One thing that I can trust is that I cannot trust the government. If our founding fathers, the very government that created the Constitution, didn't trust themselves, nor the government to come after them, we should all be the same. Don't trust government. But, going after people like that, meanwhile, leaders of Black Lives Matter are buying $1 million homes with all that money, and nobody says anything. But, yeah, January 6th was not an insurrection. It was a mostly peaceful protest gone bad from a bunch of the people. Some of those people were just got into the moment and got carried away. Some of them committed some crimes, breaking stuff, entering illegally, etc. And they're being charged, as they should be. But it needs to stop being called an insurrection. Anyone with any common sense knows that that was not an attempt to overthrow the government, and Trump was not involved in such a thing. That's ludicrous. That's insane. That's stupid. And if you truly believe that, you're an idiot. Or you're naive as hell. Do some research. Look at the facts. A bunch of guys went to a rally to overthrow the government. They didn't bring any weapons, though. No ammo. And they forced themselves into a building wearing face makeup and bullhorns. Viking helmet stuff. That sounds like somebody that's really planning an insurrection. That sounds like somebody that's going to a protest and he's going to be as ludicrous as he can be. There's even footage of security and stuff there at the Capitol telling guys, "Hey, come on, man, don't go over there. Come on over here," and then them doing it, or just opening the doors. Don't get me wrong, it was a crime and things happened and people need to be prosecuted. But let's call it what it is. A mostly peaceful protest gone bad. And a bunch of dumbasses that did dumbass things. Remember, like, share, and subscribe, and throw some comments in there if you want. Thanks a lot. I appreciate everything, guys. Bye.